Write a note on the evolution of the idea of human rights. Human rights are rights inherent to all human beings regardless of our nationality, residence, sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, language, or any other status. We are all equally entitled to our human rights without discrimination. This is the modern concept of our fundamental rights, but it was not always this way. The belief that everyone, by virtue of her or his humanity, is entitled to certain human rights is fairly new and is something stemming from an evolution of the consideration of human dignity over the last centuries. Its roots lie in earlier tradition and documents of many cultures. Evolution of the idea of human rights. The origin of human rights are ideally pinpointed to the year 539 BC when the troops of Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon. Cyrus freed the slaves, declared that all people had the right to choose their own religion and establish racial equality. These and other principles were recorded on a baked clay cylinder known as the Cyrus cylinder, whose provisions served as inspiration for the first four articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Another cornerstone is human rights history is represented by the promulgation the Magna Carta 1215. The Magna Carta was issued on 15 June 1215, also called Magna Carta Liberatum, or the Great Charter of the Liberties of England, originally in Latin and translated into vernacular French as early as 1219, and later on it was modified by time to time. The 1215 charter required King John of England to proclaim certain liberties and accept that his will was not arbitrary. For example, by explicitly accepting that no freeman, non-serf could be punished except through the law of the land, a right which is still in existence in England. B. The Bill of Rights 1689. The Bill of Rights, or the Bill of Rights 1688, is an act of the Parliament of England passed on 16 December 1689. This lays down limits on the powers of sovereign and sets out the rules of Parliament and rules for freedom of speech in Parliament, the requirement to regular elections to Parliament, and the right to petition the monarch without fear of retribution. It re-established the liberty of the Protestants to have arms for their for their defense within the rules of law, as papists were both armed and employed contrary to law. See number. U.S. Declaration of Independence 1776. The Declaration of Independence was a statement adopted by the Continental Congress on July 4, 1776, which announced that the 13 American colonies then at war with Great Britain regarded themselves as independent states and no longer a part of the British Empire. It contained that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain and unalienable rights, that among these are liberty and the pursuit of happiness. This view was notably promoted by Abraham Lincoln, who considered the Declaration to be the foundation of his political philosophy and argued that the declaration is a statements of principles through which the United States Constitution should be interpreted. It has worked for the rights of marginalized people throughout the world. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizens, 1793. It is a fundamental document of the French Revolution defining the individual and collective rights of all the states of the realm as universal, influenced by the doctrine of natural rights. The rights of man are held to be universal. It was adopted during the French Revolution in 1789, but after modification it was adopted in 1793. This declaration is in the spirit of natural law, which does not base itself on religious doctrine or authority. According to this, men are born and remain free and equal in rights, and hence the role of government is to recognize and secure these rights. They are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. In our Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR 1948, United Nations 1948, World War II 1939 to 1945, millions of people were died, civilians were killed in war, half of Jewish population was killed by Hitler, millions of people become homeless. April 1945, delegates from 50 countries come together at San Francisco. Goal of conference was to form an international body to promote peace and prevent future wars. 24 October 1945, UDHR adopted in 10th December 1948, contains 30 articles which defines human rights. It prohibits unreasonable search and seizure, or cruel and unusual punishment. Drawbacks to general, not binding, depends on the state's goodwill. National Human Rights Commission, NHRC, 1993, established on 12 October 1993 as per the provision of Human Rights Act 1993. Act was amended in year 2006. Watch of Human Rights in India headquarters located in New Delhi, established under Articles 253 to conformity with the Paris Principles. We all have a responsibility to ensure the welfare of humanity, to try to make this a happier